Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Dan Storey.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am joined by Dan Storey. And boy, does he have an interesting story to tell us. Dan, tell us who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Xander. So I'm, I guess a behavioral scientist is the way you could classify it. My studies have been in psychology and decision science for the last, I don't know how many years since I finished my master's. But I channel that into a few different areas. I channel it into sales and leadership training, do lots of time in that. But also then personally, I'm a bodybuilder. And actually in 3 weeks' time, I'm going to be competing for the natural Mr. Olympia competition.
Wow.
And let me tell you that is, yes, there's some physical aspects in there in terms of lifting, but that whole journey has been a huge mental, psychological battle for me.
Absolutely. And I want to hear about that because if people don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Natural bodybuilder Olympia is you are not taking any artificial growth hormones, stimulants, whatever. It's all whatever you can build by just pumping the iron, right?
It's whatever I can build. Yeah, the cells of my aging body. So I'm in a master's category as well. So I'm 45 years old now. So that means all of that kind of fun testosterone stuff that used to be flowing around my body is now kind of got to go looking for it very hard.
Well, that's good. So, Dan, how did you begin on that epic journey of deciding, hey, you want to know what I want to do? I'm going to spend hours and hours in the gym building these muscles.
Yeah. So it's not a huge shift. This is the thing. I think when I started it, I thought it was going to be huge. But actually fitness has been a part of my life since I can remember. Like I grew up as a child playing a lot of sport. I went to the gym to be better at playing sport. And so I played soccer fairly competitively. I played football competitively. As a Brit, like I played football, it's a weird thing, but we'll go with it. So both the
gridiron, right?
And gridiron, there you go.
Gridiron.
So I've always played sport and it's always been a part of me, and then the gym has been like a performance enhancer to kind of be stronger, faster, all of those things. COVID hit, and just before COVID, we had a daughter. She's 4.5 years old, almost 5. And actually, if you listen very carefully, I'm very close to her school. So if you hear screams, that's probably her. I'll take credit for that. And at that point, COVID hit as well, and everything kind of stopped. I was playing amateur football and I needed a new challenge. Like that was, you couldn't kind of hang out in groups of more than, I don't know how many the numbers were at the time.
Right.
But
yeah.
And so I looked at a new challenge. I did try for about a very small window, Ironman. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and do triathlon and see that. And my body very quickly told me that was a terrible idea. But I'm the kind of person that needs a challenge, right? I need a challenge. I need something to kind of focus my energies into. And so I said to my brother, who used to bodybuild, I said, hey, I think I'm going to try bodybuilding. What do you think? And he said, don't do it. Terrible idea. It's like, why? He says, because you're going to get hooked. You're going to challenge yourself. You're going to push yourself harder than you've ever had to push yourself before. And there's no coming back from it. And I'm like, sorry, what's the downside of all those things? And yeah, that was it. And that was maybe 4 or so years ago. And yeah, it's gone okay so far.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. It's always interesting. I talk about, our epic journey. Some are shorter and some are longer, right? And when we get on an epic journey that actually it has a destination, but not necessarily an ending, right? Yeah. I used to run marathons, and I ran my first marathon. I was so excited, and about 5 minutes after I got done, I said, now what? Right? Like here I am. I've completed this. It was a lifelong goal. This is great. I'm not taking away from it, but I'm done. I hit that destination, but I don't feel like it's like, all right, I'm done. I've got to imagine with the bodybuilding that it is, you have your competition coming up, but that's not the end. It's not like, oh, I'm, Mr. Masters Natural Olympia. It's not like you're like, okay, see ya. I'm done with that.
I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. Like if it's a goal, and I've done a couple of marathons and neither of them have been competitive, but I got around and got the medal.
You finished it.
Exactly.
And that's the only thing. You
Yeah.
finished it. That's honestly, no, I certainly was not competitive. I was competitive with myself, but that's about
Exactly.
it.
But for me, it was one of those things. It's like I like to say I've done it. I like to say I've done it. And actually, I've seen people in bodybuilding who say, I've got into shape and I know now that I can do it. And it proves something to themselves that they didn't know about themselves before. Like I like that the application of discipline, the persistence, the doing something that's just a little bit outside of the comfort zone and kind of holding on to it for a period of time. Get on stage, kind of do your thing, get all the fake tan. And then you have that moment where you're like, you know what? I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the challenge. And I actually remember that feeling from my first show. I think then there's the thing that you're talking about, which is the journey, right? And the
Yeah.
journey, you can't tell looking forwards. You can only tell looking back. And so I can connect certain dots that have brought me up to this moment, but only with hindsight. Like you can look back and see the theme. But like I said, fitness has always been a theme. But for me, it was a change. So for me, there was one moment that said, I'm not just going to do it once, but I'm going to redesign my life to some extent. And that was, I saw a photo and kind of my daughter was very young. We were on a beach in England. There's a place called Weston-super-Mare. If you've ever been, you'll know that the super part of that name is ironic. And we were
That's
there
how
kind of
most beaches in England, as far
yeah.
as I know. But
Yeah, we have a couple of good ones, but yeah, the Western Super is definitely in the top 95% for sure. So yeah, basically run along, sunshine, had the t-shirt off or shirt off, and there was a photo. And when I saw this photo later, my mum showed me the photo. Nothing out of the ordinary, but I didn't see the person who I wanted to represent. Like I'm a teacher, I'm a trainer, I teach people, sales teams, leadership teams to perform to be at their best. And what I saw in that photo was somebody who'd settled for average.
Okay.
Like it's average physique, average lifestyle, average
Yep.
career, so many different averages. And all I saw was a list of excuses. I can't explain anything more than that. And it just kind of kicked my butt. And I said, are you happy with that? Is that the standard that you want to live your life at? And it was at that point I was like, okay, well, I need to do something. I need to really step up. And there's loads of different areas that you can transform your life. But for me, the fun challenge was fitness. And like I said, I've always trained and done the gym part. I knew that part was in the bag. It was all the other parts. And the question was, hey, Dan, you know what? Do you have the discipline to stick this through? Do you have the persistence?
Yeah.
Do you have the attention to detail? Do you have all of these things that you don't know if you have because you haven't proven yourself to have these things? Like that's what you need to go and build.
Right.
And so for me, it was a lifestyle choice. It was that, okay, well, let's go and discover those other sides of me that I've never really dived into.
Absolutely. And then there are two things that you just said that I think are really important when we're on our epic journey. The first is working hard for mediocrity what you want. I know in my own life, I used to work in the corporate world. I did a variety of things. I had jobs that I had no right having. One of those was I was a software developer. Now, understand that in university, I majored in history and psychology. So it's about as far away from tech, but I have a insane belief that I can do anything I set my mind to, and I've proven again and again I can do it. But I was a software engineer, and I was working really hard to be mediocre, honestly. And I looked at that and said, that's not what I want. I don't want to be. It's just not. My brain doesn't work the way it needs to. I don't think that way, right? I'd run into a problem and I'd go talk to want to go talk to my colleagues. And some of them were not as social as I was. So it was harder for them. They were very introverted. It was really hard when this huge extrovert comes, right? So I get that. And looking at a picture and going, it's not bad, but it's not how I see myself. The other thing that I think is important, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have some friends who've done, bodybuilding. You're right. It changes your whole life because it's not just about being in the gym. It's about your nutrition. And specifically, you become, I don't want to say obsessed, but you're certainly highly concentrated on what you're eating and when you're eating. Am I correct on that?
You can say obsessed. I'd say some people are passionate, and passionate will get you so far. You've got to cross a line. I weighed every meal that I ate for 14 months.
Yeah.
In fact, I was on a diet for 14 months. I'd have scales. I knew exactly what I was putting into my body.
And you knew exactly how much protein, how many carbs, how many macros,
I tracked it,
all of that.
put it down on my app, counted it all, was making sure. Like I'd get to 10 o'clock at night and I'd look at my thing and I need to eat 27 grams of protein or something ridiculous like that. but it rewired my brain. Like I now know what a sensible portion size was. Like before, I just like, yeah, just bowls. Like a bowl was a measurement. Like that was the kind of thing. You mentioned something really interesting, which was, you were working hard to stay average. For me, it was the other way around. I was working not hard to stay average. I got to a point where everything was so comfortable. Like I didn't really have to work. I went to meetings. I had a team of people that I trained and developed that I kind of, bring along with me, and they would say the things that I wanted to say, and I'd already gotten them to the point where I'm like, okay, well, these guys know exactly what I was going to say. Everything is working smoothly. I didn't have to put in too much effort to keep the wheels turning, and I could have just showed up, and everything would have been fine. But I was at a point, I'm like, and if you look at the researchers, we have phases of life, and I'm in this phase where there's a question. A key question is generativity versus stagnation. Is, do I still want to keep building? Do I still want to keep doing stuff, or do I want to just stagnate and just go, well, I'm just going to sit here and like let things happen for the rest of time? And I don't know if it's arrogance, probably is to some extent, in a hopefully a positive way, or confidence, or just energy. But I don't feel like I'm ready to sit down. I don't feel like I'm ready just to kind of fade into the background and let somebody else.
Absolutely, Dan. I mean, I'm older than you, but I can say I truly believe that we are as old as we believe we are, right? And I'm sure that people who are your age who are like, oh, I'm too old, I can't do that, right? And they truly are. They look older than they are. And they act really old. I look at my mom, who's 84 years old, and the mind and the will are so strong. The body may not be quite keeping up with her, but she's still there, and she's still traveling around the world, and not letting some slight physical things get in the way. She's like, I'm going. She's going to the Amazon in like next spring. And I'm like, you go, Mom, right? Yeah. Like, yeah, absolutely. And I honestly, I look at my chronological age, I'm 56, and I'm like, I just don't believe that, right? If I went to a bar and they asked for my ID and said, no, you can't come in, I might actually buy it, because I'm like, I don't feel that old. And I believe it is. I think that mindset of I'm not stagnant. I am gonna fight hard. Yeah. Are there things that I can't do as well as when I was 30 or 35? Absolutely. I ride road bikes. I don't run as much, but I ride road bikes and I love it. But it takes time. 2 years ago, I was on my mountain bike and I crashed and wrecked my shoulder, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting back. Yeah. But I don't know what back is. So,
You'll get back. You'll get back.
No, but I am. I'm back on my road bike. I'm not afraid. I can ride it without pain. I'm all things considered, I'm doing really well. I just don't necessarily have the range of motion in my right shoulder that I used to have. But looking at what I did, I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. The doctors tell me, yeah, you're doing, don't worry about it. You're doing good. And I don't have pain day to day. So that's a big thing. Yeah. So one of the things I like to ask people, in my book, I talk about these two really powerful words, not yet. And so you mentioned that you have a book coming out. I've written 3 books, so I feel you about what a process that is. People will say, oh, has your book come out? Not yet. Doesn't mean that no. If you just say no, it just makes it sound like it's never going to happen. Yep. And as you're on your bodybuilding journey here, there's a whole lot of not yet. Can I bench press whatever, whatever. I don't want to put a number out and either overestimate or have you go, oh, come on, I did that,
it could be pounds or kilos, so we won't go with the specifics.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying is not yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Just means I'm working towards it.
There was a moment, let me just jump on that one. There was a moment before I did my first competition. And I think the Muhammad Ali quote says, he said, I told people I was the greatest long before I ever stepped in the ring. There's this quote that he says. And I remember doing this sales presentation in London, right? And I was a guest speaker, and you do the intro slide, oh, here's who I am. And you try and do your professional thing. And, I do these things and whatnot. And part of the intro, I said, oh, I'm a bodybuilder. And I put on the screen this picture of me at the gym. right? It probably wasn't very flattering. And I felt really weird. I felt like a massive fake because I'm like, I haven't done this. I'm not a bodybuilder. How are you going to say you're a bodybuilder, Dan? Like, what are you doing? I was expecting somebody to put their hand up and literally say, you're not a bodybuilder.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that kind of thing. And this is what I find is we have, anytime we set ourselves a massive challenge, we have imposter syndrome that kicks in. And that for me was one of the biggest things. You know, is you're saying you're a bodybuilder, but you've not done it. Now, luckily, I have reinforcement. I can say it quite comfortably, and I've been on stage multiple times, and I've done all right. But before that, I had no reference. And this is what a lot of people get to the point is they say, okay, well, I'm going to play safe. Like I know who I am, you know, and I'm 45 years old. If I look at who I am today, I'm a result of all of the decisions, choices, and habits and things I've had up until now. If I say I want to change something, then I don't have any reference for that. So, you know, I'm an author. I've written 2 books. I wouldn't say my writing is great, but it's definitely getting better. But now I'm trying on this like label of author. I'm going to write a lot more books. I've got a whole list set up, but I still feel a little bit fake saying author, even though I've got 2. Like, how many do you need before you can call yourself an author? And so when we have this feeling, this kind of imposter syndrome or feel like a fraud, when I look at the day to day, I question my activities and I spend too much time thinking rather than doing. And, you know, so I'll sit down to write and my little brain will kick in and say, oh, Dan, you're not very good at writing, you're not even an author. Why are you telling people you're an author? This voice goes crazy, right? It's just like, it's got everybody programmed in from all of time that I've ever kind of had any kind of interaction with. And they all throw the perfect question at me to get me to doubt myself. Yes. And so my voice is going over the top. I probably shouldn't have as much caffeine as I do, but, you know, I love a cup of coffee just to keep me going. But what that does is instead of doing the thing, I then get distracted and I doubt myself, or I try and do it, or I'll procrastinate or go and do something like that. And the exact same thing was the same with the gym. Like I had these moments where I'm not a bodybuilder and every day I would, you know, like I said, I'd weigh my food. I'd go down in the morning. I'd step on the scales. I'd look on the scales. It hasn't changed since yesterday. I go to the gym. I stand in front. You have, as a bodybuilder, you have to do these stupid poses in front of the mirror and send it to your coach. And I'm like, oh, literally, I look the same as I looked yesterday. I'm still chubby and I haven't got any muscle definition. And I'm like, it's such a slow progress. Yeah. And if you don't know the path, if you don't know the journey, then that can get too much. I definitely think like this is, you know, if I don't know if I'm ever going to get there, then that's where a lot of people stop. They're like, oh, the progress isn't coming on very much. But I knew there was a path and I know it now, but I still get this element of doubt, right? As I know if I keep going, if I keep training, if I keep eating sensibly and burning this many calories, then at X date, I'm going to end up at X weight. Like it's scientific. It's scientific. With my writing, I know I'm here at the moment. I need to get here before I can start editing. That is to say 70, 80,000 words. If I do 2,000 words a day, I'm there. If I just look at this part, then it's not going to be very much. And so I can get demotivated looking at the whole thing. Absolutely. Or I can give myself a zone. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't tell you, I mean, the agreement is that one, the imposter syndrome, totally get it. My first book, I wrote it, told people I was coming out with a book for 5 years, and I actually was not doing anything to have it come out. And I got tired of being, I didn't want to be that person who kept saying that, right? So I said, I'm putting it out. And complete, like, I had nothing, I'm a talker, not a typer. Right. So I wrote a book, which still blows my mind that I've written 3. But anyway, for the first year, people come up and tell me that they liked the book. It was helpful. It was a book on sibling loss. And I just did I in my mind, I'm like, really? Because if they told me it wasn't what the paper was printed on, I would have believed that more. Yeah. Because I had all this negative stuff. I talk about in my book, and I talk to people all the time. The meanest person in your life is you. Don't be mean, right? Everyone has that, oh, you're not good enough. I call it the committee, all the different voices that you said, all the voices you've heard that tell you what you can't do. I talk about the 97-3 rule in my book, which is that 97% of your day, Dan, is actually really good. And up to 3% isn't as good. And yet, we focus on that 3% and ignore the 97. And when I was, I too have my master's and I'm a licensed mental health professional. And when I was doing my internship, I was doing school-based middle school and high school. And a lot of my clients had academic challenges. That was part of they were talking about. And I'd ask them what their, so I'll ask you, in school, what was your least favorite subject?
History.
History. So if you got a 97 on a history test, how would you feel?
I'd be surprised.
Okay. But you'd be pretty happy, right?
Yeah.
would you go home and tell your parents, I missed 3 points? Or would you be like, I got a 97, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I go, let's apply that to your daily life. Why are you ignoring the 97% of your day that's actually gone really well and only focus on what you didn't do? So you go to the gym. Well, that's great. You actually went to the gym. You didn't think about it. You actually did it. You ate the food that you're supposed to eat. So if part of that 3% is, your bicep isn't popping the way you thought it would, or today you can't, curl, as much as you did yesterday, maybe because you're tired or there's any variety of, right? You focus on that, but forget the fact that you got up, you ate well, you went to the gym, all of this stuff. And I really encourage people when I'm talking to them, don't focus on the stuff that is going right, because there's so much more. You were talking about not having that empirical proof, and I get it. When I first started to run, train for a marathon, I'm like, what am I going to do? Greatest thing that was, I was handed a training schedule. So all I had to do was look and go, all right, go run 5 miles. So that's what I would do. I didn't have to worry about the rest of it. I just knew that it was going to happen. I'm sure in bodybuilding, you've got a schedule. You're doing, these arms, arms and back or whatever, and you know what you need to do. You don't need to worry. It's all going to happen. You're going to hopefully peak when you're supposed to peak. You're going to have what you need, and you just need to focus on what's going on today.
If you have
an eye on the whole thing, but know that you gotta do what's here today. You can't worry about next week. Today. So
it's interesting what you say. Like we have, and I was just writing about this in the new book about comparison. We're really bad at comparison. My daughter's learning comparison at the moment. She's got an app for learning maths. I think it's called Dreambox. And so she'll sit there, and then the thing will say in a very robotic voice, pick the one that is greater. And it shows it flashes up a card with some dots on it, and then it shows her different options. She has to choose the one that's greater, right? So she's like, okay, that one's greater. She's getting really good at it. Took a little while to figure it out. It doesn't ask, pick the one that is better. And this is as we get older, right? It's just different to her. Well, that one's more than that one. That's great. It doesn't say it's better. It doesn't say it's worse. It's just more or less. And this is what we do with comparison. And like you say, you go and read all the 1-star reviews of your book, and you're just feeling terrible. But comparison teaches you gaps and differences. And so if you can learn it in that way, and it's not better or worse, it's just different. Like you say, I can look in a mirror and compare myself to somebody else and say, okay, well, I need to do some work there. Yeah, I don't try and beat myself up about it. Try not to. Still kind of get into it. But comparison is a useful tool if we allow it to be. But most of the time, we compare ourselves to the wrong things. We try and keep up with the Kardashians as opposed to kind of improving on ourselves.
And also, I'll take something that's probably resonates with you. You're in the gym and you see someone who looks, in your mind, better than you. They've got better bicep definition, better, triceps, whatever, right? And you go, oh my God, right? And I talk to my daughters about this. You look into someone else's yard and see that the grass is really green, but you don't know what's fertilizing their lawn.
Yep.
Which is a nice way. And so and that person may look at you and be like, wow, he's just killing it. Right. Yeah. And yes, there are those things that we will look and compare ourselves. But I think you're absolutely right. Being mindful of your comparison, be mindful of what you're comparing against. Because you said that you'd run at least one marathon in your life. If I'm comparing myself to the East African runners, I'm going to feel really bad about myself. Right. Let's face it. Today, some of those men ride about on average, they run as fast as I'm riding my road bike. Maybe I'm going a little faster. They're doing 13 miles an hour. Yeah. That's insane. And then they pick it up at mile 22. You look, I don't know about you. I get to mile 22 it was all I could do to I keep running. I'm doing okay, but I'm certainly not doing some negative splits here.
Mile 17 was my weakest point. There was an idea that popped into my head that says, hey, you know what, now it'd be a good time to have a little walk and a rest. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Terrible. Yeah. Terrible. But you mentioned something interesting, right? And that is that, if you have a plan, you show up and you just do the plan. And I think there is a case of that. But what a lot of people, kind of get misconstrued is that you don't always have to have a good day. This is the thing. My workouts, this morning was a terrible workout. If I look at kind of quality of workout, I'm like, it wasn't a great workout. I didn't have a lot of time. I kind of woke up at 3:40 in the morning, which is far too early. I couldn't sleep. Had no carbs yesterday. Kind of got to the gym at 5:30. I knew I had to be back early because we had a parent-teacher conference this morning. So I'm like, I'm being judged as a dad as well as a bodybuilder. Oh my goodness. So I didn't have a great workout. I hadn't had a lot of food, but I got it done. I got it done, and I showed up, and I put as much effort as I could. What I heard this kind of interview the other day. Nobody has a good day every day. Like, nobody has a good day every day. It's impossible. But you show up, because consistency and commitment over time is what makes the difference, not intensity. Like, intensity means nothing. You have to have some good sessions, but over time, if you keep doing stuff, it's going to add up. And so when I think about workouts now, when I think about writing, and when I think about anything in kind of the background, is 1/3 of these are going to be amazing. Like, you're going to knock the socks off of this, whatever it is. Like, you're going to have an amazing session. I have some little kind of magical pre-workout powder that definitely adds to that. But from a writing perspective, was it 2 days ago? I was in the zone. I was so, like, everything was flowing. It felt amazing. And then you're like, oh, now I've run out of time. Like, damn it. But you just have these creative moments, right? So 1/3 of times are going to be like that. 1/3 are going to be terrible. And let's just say it's the 1/3 are going to be the worst ones. You're going to go to the gym, you're going to be tired, you're going to have no strength, you're going to struggle to warm up on the weights that you normally kind of lift 100 times, and you're going to be like tired. All the joints are going to hurt, and you're going to have all these excuses, and the brain's going to kick in and say, oh, why don't you just go home? But if you do the workout, you're still a step further ahead than you were. And then in the middle, there's just going to be ones that are just pretty average, and that's going to be a lot of the time as well. But you're still there. You're showing up every single time. And, over time, if you do all of those workouts, some of them are going to be amazing. Some of them are just going to show up. You're still putting in a ton of effort. And at the end,
it does. And we have baseball here, okay? And in baseball, someone will make it into the Hall of Fame if they have a lifetime average of over 300, right? Which is, I'm not taking anything away from it. But imagine in our own life, let's say we put 9 hours of effort into work and workout and stuff like that. And for you to have a Hall of Fame day, just like you said, the one that you 1/3. So of that 9 hours, only 3 hours have to actually be good. And that's a Hall of Fame day. You're like, oh my God, I just knocked it out of the park, right? Exactly, right? I know that in the trainings I've done running and riding the bike, some are really great rides and some are not, but you appreciate the not good workout, or the good workout, because you have the, like, oh, yesterday wasn't good, but today was so much better, right? If they were all perfect, it'd be like in the movie WALL-E, where it's, sunny and 73 every single day, and you're not going to appreciate it.
Exactly. And competition isn't like that. Like, the real world is not like that. It's funny you talked about, do people have better arms and triceps than me? I'm doing all right in those areas, but there's definitely areas where people are kicking my butt, right? Well, but you change the game. You play to your strengths. You lean into the things that you're good at.
And ultimately, if you go get up on stage and you're like, I did the best I could. Whether, yes, we'd like to win. I had no delusion when I ran my marathon and half marathons that I wasn't going to win. I wasn't going to podium. That wasn't my point. My point was I wanted to compete in this. I wanted to finish. And if I have a personal record, then there's my victory, right? Crossing the line and getting the medal to be able to go home and go, hey, I have tangible proof that I am capable of doing something.
Do you know what my victory is? This is what I think. This is the different one. And it's tough, right? As a dad, I want to support my daughter, but I also believe in the power of competition. It's not about just doing your best. I don't think it's not quite that. It's about stepping into competition and not having anything that you're thinking about that you didn't do. And this is that challenge. So for when I get on stage, right, and I'm in physique category, which means I get to wear shorts. My legs are good. Like, I train my legs very hard, but I don't get them judged. But everything else on my body is on show. And if I step on there and I think, you know what, a few weeks ago you had that piece of cake. Remember that piece of cake? Yeah, it was a good piece of cake right there, right? I was like, yeah, that piece of cake. And my head is like, oh, and like, I'd probably get away with one little bite of it and, then do an hour of walking or something. But I think for us, it's doing your best, but it's not having any reasons why you couldn't do better. That's the thing. And a lot of people, whether it's competitive, like stepping on trying to be the world champion, or just doing a marathon, whatever time you get, is we kind of often think back to all of those things that we did and like, oh, I wish I'd done that, and we kind of second guess ourselves. And I was reading an interesting piece of research yesterday about comparison, and it was comparing the medalists at the Olympics. I think it was 1992. Let's get my dates right. And it looked at the satisfaction levels of the gold, silver, and bronze winners. And they weren't really interested in gold, because gold, they're gold. They're going to be happy regardless. The question was, who's happier, silver or bronze? And it turns out the bronze medalists are far happier than the silver medalists. Bronze medalists are comparing themselves to, hey, I could have gone home with nothing, but I've got a bronze. This is amazing. Yay, me, I'm on the podium. Because fourth place gets nothing in the Olympics. It's just like, you don't even know who they are. Second place, silver medal, they're so close. They're so close. I could have won gold. I could have done that. They're not thinking about bronze. They're not thinking about it at all. It's, I was so close. And what happens, we have this idea of counterfactual thinking, is we start second guessing. We start saying, what if, what if, what if? And for me, satisfaction is about saying, there is no what if. I'm here. Like, I'm bringing everything.
I've done everything I can, and I can't change anything. I absolutely get you that when I got into that corral to run the marathon, there wasn't anything more that I could do. And you get on the stage, and shoulda, woulda, couldas will. It's like a dog chasing its tail. They can. It's a vicious circle, and you got to catch yourself and go, no, I didn't, and I'm going with what I got. Right. Yeah. I've done what I've done. I can't change it. I can sit up here, be in my head, and go, oh, I should have done that. I shouldn't have had the piece of cake. Whatever, right? Yeah. Well, Dan,
by the way, you can still have cake. Like, I still have a teeny tiny bit of cake.
Absolutely. A little taste sometimes is better than denying yourself. At least you're like, okay, I had that taste.
I got to be a daddy as well. Like, bodybuilding is part of my life. I have this card behind me that says I can go pro, but I'm an amateur athlete. I'm, a full-time dad. I'm a full-time husband. I'm, so many parts of me. I'm not like, come on.
It's not all of who you are.
Yeah.
Dan, this has been absolutely fantastic. What are the name of the books that you already have? What's the name of your new book coming out? How can people find it?
So the one that's out at the moment is this one, Personal Transformation Blueprint. And this talks about what we've talked about today, which is how do we create significant change? And I think the first part is we start with imagining like our situation to be different. We dream a bit bigger. We kind of get out of this trap of average. Then we've got to realize that we're going to face imposter syndrome. So how do we overcome that? How do we cross that mindset gap? And then how do we work hard? We've got to put our effort into everything. And so how do we grind? How do we work smart? But ultimately, how do we sacrifice? How do we use strategic sacrifice to give things up that we don't really need to get stuff that's better? I think, there's, especially in today's kind of economy and mindset, everyone wants stuff for free, and they want microwave stuff. It's like, come on, man, put some effort.
Yeah.
So that's the Personal Transformation Blueprint. Go and grab that one on Amazon. The next one is Unstuck. And I think, I'm looking at yours as, epic begins with one step forward.
Yeah.
The first step is always the hardest. Getting off the couch is the first step, is the toughest part of going and having a workout. And, like I said at the beginning, I'm a behavioral scientist. My studies are in psychology and why our brain does mysterious, magical things that we wish it wouldn't do, but it does it anyway just to mess us up. And we are programmed. Like, we are programmed to get stuck. Our brain likes to stay in the status quo. It does these things that allow us to compare to different things that keep us unmotivated.
Right.
So it's not our fault that we get stuck, but it is our responsibility to get unstuck.
Absolutely.
So the new book is going to be called something around Unstuck. And it's about that idea of how do we get unstuck mentally and then put it into practice.
Cool. Awesome. Is there any other, do you have a website that people can go to find you?
Come and see me at danstorey.com. I'm going to be posting updates. I write and I podcast and I think and I try and express as much as I can. I'll be posting updates about the bodybuilding as well. And, people can find my links to social on there as well.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to remind everyone that if you want to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, remember, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Zander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.